Red.
You guys should grab it for someone.
Ladies and gentlemen, sister and myself and our families to be able to do this for our church. And I don't know for sure. I believe that my parents were married in Emmanuel Church, and I think I was baptized, and Ronnie and Linda also, but we're not positive because I don't have the records that say so. But for some reason I want to think we were, because 90 years ago my grandparents didn't start coming here when it first started, but very shortly afterwards. And if you looked at the picture board up there, those are our grandparents, Lucy Gasparian Gabriel at the very end. And our father was very active as he got older. Dad was treasurer for many years, and Mom was always on Ladies Aid, and at one time she was vice president of Ladies Aid. And my grandma also was on Ladies Aid. And if you looked at the picture board over there, there's a little picture of my mom and dad with our grandma with the shovel. And when we were at Washington Church, we added on to the church, and during that time, Grandma got the shovel and dug the dirt for that building, so we have that picture of her. Loved my Harry that sang in church. That's my great-grandson.
What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of
Jesus. Kimberly and Harry Bagramian. There's some history behind Harry's family, because Harry's grandparents on his mother's side of the family were Antoians. And those of you that have been in the church for a long time know that the Antoians were very, they were very active in our church. And before Al and Sue Antoian, Al's parents were very active in our church also. So the Antoian family, who are Harry's family, were very active here. And Mickey and Sharon Madzoff, who I mentioned earlier, Mickey's mom, Aunt Helen Madzoff, her sisters were Lil Babajan and Nellie Zakharoff and Sally Stepanian, who Sally was a member of our church, Nellie was, Lil was, they all were. And once Aunt Helen got involved in the Ladies Aid, she was always a doer. And she really was very, very active in the Ladies Aid. And so that is my husband's side of the family, who I have representing us today too. And the two darling girls that sang in church.
Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
Their grandfather and my husband were brothers, and that's my brother-in-law, Al Gasparian. And his wife, Phyllis. And I always say, Phyllis isn't a sister-in-law, she's my sister. I'm very blessed. My brother.
You know, it's always good to be able to talk about your family, but I know that each and every one of you probably have a story about your family. I'm going to give you the short version of ours. As Barbara said, my grandfather and my grandmother came from Armenia back in the early 1900s, and my grandfather was he was a religious man. We still have his Bible that he signed, that he brought from the old country with him, and and he wanted a church to go to. So in about 1924 or so, the Holy Cross Church, which was on Maple and just off of Washington Boulevard, not too far from the old Emmanuel Church, he became a pillar of that church. He was one of the pillars of the church. And so all the events and whatever they had to do for their Christian education and so on and so forth, that's where they went. My grandmother, on the other hand, was even more religious than my grandfather. And she wasn't getting what she felt was what she wanted to hear from the Bible. It was more of the songs and the traditions and so on and so forth from the Holy Cross Church. So she started looking around, and she met a reverend by the name of Yeretzian. And Padre Yeretzian was, I believe he was one of the first, if not the first, pastor that was there, the Padre that was there. So she got to know him well, and my grandfather's ignoring the situation. He doesn't want to make any changes. But being a good husband that he was, he said, okay, we'll try it. We'll go there. So he went there, and he got hooked. When he heard the sermon and he heard what they were doing for the Armenian people at that time, and this was in the early 30s, he felt that was going to be his church. So as time went on, I may skip around a little bit, but something just hit my head, and Barbara will remember this. Linda wasn't born yet, but every Sunday morning, my father would wake us up to make sure that we were on time and we were ready to go to church. But there was always traffic. So my grandfather would sit in the back. He never drove. So my grandmother, my grandfather back. I'm sitting in the middle of them. Barb's sitting there next to me, and my mom and dad are in the front. And my grandfather says, "There's cars are backed up. You know, the traffic is heavy and it's raining." He says, "I'll show John." He called my father by his name. "I'll show John," he says. "Men gidek uemerto, mes esher uemerto." So I mean, I never forgot that. Yeah, and he did say it once. He would say it every time there was traffic. That's what he'd say. So anyway, we had a good time going to church, and I can remember Sunday school. They moved it from one place to another, and anyway, it was a thrill to get up Sunday mornings and go to Sunday school, and eventually we ended up, in the regular church, heard the sermons, various different podvilles. One time I can remember there was a podvilli Halajan, and there was a clock that was in the front of him on the wall. And so the congregation, gets together and says, "How come he never looks at us? He's always looking at the clock." So the poor guy, they made him change his way of doing things, so he started looking at everybody when he was saying the sermon. But anyway, I don't, I could go on, but I just want to wish the congregation and all of us a happy 90th birthday for the Emmanuel Church. And I want, as Barbara said, all of our children were baptized here. Go and I got married.
Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Jerry sing the church choir. Yeah, she's singing the church choir.
I'm not going to sing, so that's a good thing. I think I'm the only member of the choir left. I saw nobody else is here. But I just wanted to say I'm Barbara's oldest daughter, and I grew up not in this church, but when it was another place. I have nothing but warm memories of the congregation coming after Harry was reminding me. It's what American churches don't do. After church, we would come have coffee, cheese, and bread, and pastries, and just talk for a little bit. Always the same people, always a welcoming community. I went to Sunday school here. I sang in the choir for a very short time, only because they just were desperate. They needed people. But every time I come here and I hear the same songs, and some of the ladies remember me probably more than I remember them, it gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And when I remember on Easter time, we'd have like egg fights, and I don't know, when my daughter married Harry, him and Kay, his mother, and I remember being young here at the same time with our parents and grandparents, and remember Uncle Mickey and Aunt Marge and Pinky and Aunt Lil. And later when I got married and got in different families, these people's faces were everywhere. But I remember Aunt Margaret and Uncle Oscar Sherman. Always, everyone had their own pews in the church. They had their own spaces, and if we sat somewhere wrong, we had to move because someone else was sitting somewhere.
Be served.
But it was a comforting feeling that I can't say I feel in an American church. And I'm not prejudiced by any means. The church is a church. But it's not like family when you're there. Here, it was like home every Sunday when I came, and I just loved it. I grew up here, and I just loved it, and I miss it, and I've never felt quite a place like this that I felt every Sunday when I go. But anyway, I love seeing a lot of the familiar faces, and I love it that my mom still comes here and is comfortable, and it's filled a void in her that I know it's a very warm feeling for her, and she loves all of you and loves being a part of it. And I know when you all tell me you love my mom, we love our mom too. And anyway, I just love seeing everyone here. And I think this is her way to get our whole family to church.
We'll see you next week, right?
We used to, well, I believe we lived on Whittier Boulevard. We did. We lived on Whittier Boulevard. And at that time, our church had a very large choir. And what they would do at Christmas time, they would go caroling to the different homes. And people would say if they wanted them to go or not. So whoever's homes that they went to, they caroled. But they always ended up at my parents' home. So the choir we were the last stop, and Mom always had a feast for them.
That's why
They'd come in, and socialize and eat and have a wonderful time. And it was something that they all looked forward to, and so did we as a family. We looked forward to them coming. Those of you that have been in the church for a long time, I know Harab's nodding his head. They're remembering when we used to do that, but it was wonderful. Does anybody else care to?
I said it's so wonderful when Barbara comes to church because she makes every single person feel so special, and I agree with your daughter when you can't sit in certain pews because, well, we still have that in case you've missed it. It's just that today there were so many more of you than there were of us. You kind of overtook, But Barbara is, as you all know, is just an absolutely wonderful person. And I'm so grateful that you all came out in support of her because she, every Sunday since we first planned this homecoming, she would say, "Oh, I have granddaughters. They're going to sing, and I have, and would that be okay? Nah." So she was just as excited planning this as we are having you all here today. So thank you, Barbara. Thank you for kicking off our homecoming year, and you have made you set a standard that it's going to be difficult to meet.
No standards.
Yes, Peter.